Hello. Getting acclimated to our Zoom meeting. I see James Bernard. And welcome. Ooh, Melissa, I'm getting a text that we are a passcode. Oh, there's Melissa. She was able to get in. Hello and welcome. I don't know if I guess I'm going to do my own intro here as more people join us in this workshop. But thank you for joining me. Today is all about creative problem solving as I don't have internet at home and I forgot my laptop. So I'm at a friend's house and on a friend's laptop. And hello, Melissa.
Hi, Laura Lee. I think there might be, I had to enter a passcode to get in, and that's not normal. So I'm trying to figure out, I think there might be people trying to get in.
Okay.
That don't know how.
Hey,
so I'm not sure.
I actually figured it out.
Oh, you did? Okay, perfect.
Figured it out, yes.
Is there
I just
a way
forwarded the email. So you're all set. I think what happened was I got an email from Laura Lee with the Zoom for this one. So that's what's in here. So she's showing her Zoom and everything's fine. And Melissa, I just emailed that to you as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So yeah, it took me a second to figure that out.
Just want to make sure all the students who want to get in can get in.
Yeah, they should be able to. There are 14 people that registered, so it might just take a second. I know that which one was it? The costume design competition feedback was going over a little bit. So there might be some students there still.
Do I need to change any settings in the Zoom or?
Nope,
okay.
You're all good. You just might see people. So Laura Lee, you might see people over on the side, like in the participant thing, requesting to join. You'll just need to admit them from there, but that should be it.
Okay. Awesome.
All right, cool. Thank you. Have fun.
Thanks. Well, excellent. I guess I'll give them a couple seconds for folks to chime in, or maybe I'll just get started because we're here. So I want to thank VTA for having me and for you guys for tuning in to this special 90-minute shadow play workshop with me, Laura Lee Gulledge. So I am live streaming from Charlottesville, Virginia, aka occupied Monacan and Monahawk territories. And I'm excited to connect with you today, especially just in time for Halloween, because talking about shadows and our shadow self is perfect subject matter for this sort of creepy time of year where we're all facing our fears. So the way today's workshop is going to go is I'm going to do a quick little introduction as to who this person is here talking to you. And I'm going to give, let's see. Okay. And then I'm going to talk about shadows as a metaphor because I've always really loved shadows in storytelling. So I'm going to talk about what has inspired me over the years, as well as how shadows play into my books, because I've dealt with drawing about our shadow self a few different times in my projects. And I'll also touch on how we use shadows in Will Whit musical, because in the theater version of my graphic novel, we have actual living shadows, which to me is much more dynamic than drawn static pictures of shadows. Because really, when you think about shadows and how they play in your imagination, it's all about movement. So a static shadow isn't as scary as one that is, moving around and more animated. And then we're going to get into the hands-on part of the workshop later, where we're going to make our own shadow puppets out of our fears and our dark thoughts. And I promise it'll be fun, because I know that might not sound fun to let's reveal some personal things about ourselves in art and use it for healing. Yay, party town. But actually it is fun, especially if you sort of dip it in comics and fun archetypes and symbols. And I don't know if you have fun with it, because once you shine a light on all the sort of dark stuff inside of you, then it takes away some of its power. I'm going to change my view here because I'm recording. I'm going to end myself. Okay. So, and keep on time. Cool. Well, I'm just going to keep on going. So, to introduce myself, I'm a graphic novelist. I like to write and draw young adult graphic novels, aka comic books, that are inspired by mental health and healing. So I'm gonna flip through some of my artwork later. But I've also am an active teaching artist. So I started my career as a teacher in Louisa County, Virginia. And it's actually what inspired me to sort of follow my, authentic dream of like really what I was scared of the most. My biggest fear was actually trying to be an artist. So after dealing with 8th graders, after school on a Friday, I thought then, well, hey, being an artist doesn't sound so scary. So I attributed young people to inspire me to keep putting myself out there and trying new things and really walking this walk as an artist. So I'm a teaching artist, a striving citizen artist, and an advocate of Artner love. So I'm going to talk about Artnering a lot in my workshops, because an Artner is your partner in art. And it is part of what keeps me emotionally healthy, because sometimes when you do really personal work and you're really deep diving into yourself, you can get kind of lost in there. So that's why it's good to have a good support system of people in your life to keep you, coming back to reality, especially when reality is hard. Okay, so just a tiny bit about me. So as we get into talking about shadows, I'm going to open with a quick little story because I like telling stories. So once in college, I was on a road trip with some girlfriends, and we spent the night at a friend's family's house. And I remember it was just like a slumber party. We were having a great time. We were sort of all curled up in our sleeping bags and all sleep in the same room. We're like, oh, good night, Rebecca. Good night, Rebecca. Good night, Gabrielle. Good night, Laura Lee. And that's creepy anywhere, but then we all sort of, got quiet. And then our imagination started to imagine that, well, now I'm really scared. Like, even though I just made up, like, creepy man in the corner making a joke. But it sort of haunted us for the rest of the weekend, because the power of suggestion and imagination is what makes the dark scary. Because really, it's just you that you think you see, that you're projecting something that you see in the dark. Because as a storyteller, I know that you're supposed to have really dramatic sort of antagonists in your stories. But for me, I don't want to have like this giant nemesis for my character. I feel like the greatest nemesis for me is actually myself. So I think that the imagination and the subconscious as sort of the antagonist in the story is really intriguing, because a lot of times I'm my worst enemy, and it's my dark thoughts that are actually the more challenging obstacle in my life versus some exterior force. And as a kid, I was definitely scared of the dark as a kid, obviously, because as a creative, we write what you know, and I'm not good at making things up. So I write things based in truth. So my character Will, who's scared of the dark, is because my imagination would imagine, oh, there's a person in the corner, even though there's not. And so I think that another thing that makes shadows really a juicy metaphor and sort of unsettling for us is because they represent, like lurking dark forces. Like, I feel like it's easy to project bad things into darkness because it's an absence of light, because you don't know what's there, because what is in the dark is a mystery. So if there's anything you're trying not to think about, then of course it's going to come to the surface. And I think also darkness is unsettling because in the dark, you don't have any stimuli. So you're really alone with your own thoughts. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes being alone too much with your thoughts, you can't help but sort of maybe go to worst case scenario or get depressed or get anxious. So so I think actually that's what really the whole darkness thing to me, why it's really scary and interesting to explore. And I'm going to start actually I'm going to do a screen share for a while because I feel like me talking about this stuff is great, but really this is more fun if we have pictures. So I'm going to do screen share and screen. Oh goodness, I'm on a friend's laptop and I'm not used to this format. Oh good, I found it. File. Thank you for bearing with me. Wait, view. Okay. So where's my little keys? Okay. So, can I make that go? I'll put that there. Okay. Oh goodness, speaking of facing fears, doing a Zoom when I'm on a computer I'm not used to using, that's facing fears. Okay, so I feel like I can't talk about shadows without giving a nod to Carl Jung, who talked about our shadow self when discussing the subconscious, because I took psych classes in school as an art education major. And so I was really interested in the idea of exploring the subconscious using my art, because I didn't really think about it like that when I was younger. In fact, I was scared to make art that was really about the deep, deep stuff inside me, because I thought it would reveal there was something darkly wrong with me. And so I've explored using a lot of self-portraiture to draw about my different sides. But I think that using the shadows to express your duality is something that's been done a lot in art. I know that I haven't made this up, that you see this all the time because it is a reflection of a different aspect of ourselves, whether it's a shadow or maybe it's masks. And of course, another interpretation of what shadows can possibly represent in storytelling is that it represents something that's false, that it is maybe not the truth of a situation, like in the famous Plato's cave allegory, where the slave is watching the shadows on the wall, thinking that that's the truth, not realizing that the performers in the back behind them are actually just creating a puppet show, and they're in a cave and they're not even in the real world. So that's another angle that shadows can take, is that they can be false. So I don't know, it's really juicy to explore. It could be something really true about you. It could be something that's a lie about you. It could just be a different side of you that maybe doesn't get to see the light of day. And of course, when I think of shadows, I also think of Mordor. Actually, recently I was in a really tough situation, and the story I was using to help get through it was that I was walking through the Shadowlands, that I was going to get through it, but I was just passing through a really dark period, which I think a lot of people might be experiencing their own flavor of right now. And so it's a scary place to be, but I think that exploring our dark shadowness, this sort of scary part of us, it can help us get to the truth of the situation, even though it might be scary. But all right, this is a drawing of mine, and this is about making friends with the ghosts that will haunt you forever. Because I feel like certain things about me that chase me, certain thoughts, I would be running, but then one day it's like, wait a minute, like if these guys are going to be chasing me, what if we turn it into a conga line? Because of course I want to use humor to diffuse a situation. So I guess I'm always trying to turn the things that are causing me distress, like how to flip the script, so to speak. All right, so let's see, how am I doing on timing? Oh, I'm doing good, yes. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit more about shadows in my work before we get to our hands-on part. So shadows in my work. So my recent graphic novel, The Dark Matter of Monostar, I literally draw my negative thoughts, my depression and anxiety as a character called the Matter, because I didn't want to call it depression or anxiety, as I just wanted to, because I like to create new words to label things that feel more authentic to me, because words are really emotionally charged and people have really different definitions. Because I don't know how to label this feeling, but I know how I can draw it. So to me, the matter, it normally either pulls me in on myself, like a black hole, like dark matter. Well, I guess dark matter is more like around you all the time, but that's more physical conversation that I'm not, ask somebody else. So I feel like it either sucks me in or it kicks me out, and I'm like seeing myself from, I'm like a ghost of myself. So so in the book, I have the matter taking different shapes. Sometimes it's mostly external, like it's mostly outside of Mona, and like talking, like yelling at her, harassing her, you know, stressing her out. But then sometimes it gets like inside of her. And to me, that's the scary part. And I guess, let's see. Oh yeah, here's some more of, this is more Mona with the matter inside of her. In that picture, I still find it unsettling. And yeah, so I like to draw about these feelings. I think I learned how to draw about my emotions because I really had trouble talking to people about it. And somehow drawing about it felt safer, like, oh, I'll figure it out on paper first, and then I can reveal this hard, challenging, scary part of myself that I'm sort of embarrassed by. But I'm so grateful I've had the opportunity to draw about these things. And in my previous graphic novel, Will and Whit, which the musical is based on, this was actually my first sort of stab at drawing this shadow self, but it's a different take on it because it doesn't represent like mental illness. It represents more trauma and repressed, well, not to, no, spoiler alert, the shadows actually represent Will's parents who've passed away and she's not dealing with it. Because as someone who grew up wanting to make Disney movies, I always, of course, one of the tropes in Disney movies is that the parents are killed off and then our character has to go off in the world and, you know, find their way. And I just thought, what if I do a story about that beginning part that we never see where the parents are lost, but the young woman or young boy like is having trouble like actually grieving. So that was part of my inspiration for sort of exploring this story. And also, I just loved in Peter Pan where the shadow runs around on the wall and it's like this literal like extension of the self, this sort of like mischievous, and I guess, yeah, I sort of was thinking of that at first with Will. And so sometimes the shadow is helpful and sometimes the shadow is like hindering, so it sort of changes. So in Will's story, I draw the shadows using stipplings. They look kind of staticky instead of doing the jet black like I did in the matter. Because in the matter, I wanted it to feel really heavy. But this, I wanted it to almost seem like it was just, maybe it's real, maybe it's her imagination. It's sort of just really subtle. So on the other side of the screen, I have a panel just showing her, you know, seeing creepy faces in the trees and then learning to control herself because her name is Will, and the trees look normal again. So the shadows in the story, I feel like that they're almost like moving sand. They're just taking different shapes, almost like that creepy guy in T2 or something. And so they take shapes of things that I find often like sort of scary, like large bodies of water and hands. And we got some like wolves here. But sometimes they actually just reflect what she's not saying. Or like here with the tool, there's a wishbone shadow that there's a possibility. So it's not necessarily all bad. It's just more of an expression of her, what's happening beneath the surface that she's not really perhaps vocalizing. And of course, there's her shadow sculpture because Will works with making lamps to deal with her fear of the dark. And so as she heals, she sculpts darkness to reflect a portrait of her parents. Because I feel like as artists, we might be scared of using the darkness as a medium, but I think it's really interesting because you can't have one with the other. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes about this is from Bob Ross, of all people. It's like, white against white, you have nothing. Dark against dark, you have nothing. It's the contrast of the two that makes it visible. And of course, in the musical, I want to say one more, well, I'll get around to that later. So I want to talk a little bit more about my childhood fears. Yeah, in the musical, it's been really fun to have the shadows be real because I think it's really dealing with your thoughts. It's also about presence. Wait, let me make sure I need to, like, do I need to be keeping an eye on letting people into the, well, I'm just going to keep going. I don't know if I need to keep an eye on the waiting room, but I'm just gonna keep on going. Okay, so the musical version of Will and Whit, yes, for the shadows are the antagonists, but they're really the parents. So sometimes they're helping, sometimes they're hindering. It's a little confusing because Will is not saying, you know, like, this is what's going on. These are my dead parents. She sort of is just not talking about it. And so at the beginning, this is a photo from our first production of Will and Whit at the Ballet Camp for Performing Arts. I can talk. And here we have young performers dressed in black as our living shadows. So this was our first experiment. But we had them like physically moving things, like, you know, making up the bed after Will gets up. And they're also doing live drawing, which is something I was really excited about having in the show as a visual artist, because I never had a platform to perform when I was young that was more of a traditional, you know, sort of fit. So I just love the idea of having visual storytellers who are maybe not the traditional actor, maybe they're playing more with light, shadow, live art on stage. So I just think it's great to have a space for that in the show as an outlet for different types of creative people. So on the right side, or the side with the the non-drawing side, there is Will in the creepy storeroom. And it's a little hard to tell, but there's a couple shadows in front of her who are like the creepy dolls, which, oh my gosh, it's really fun to workshop that sort of thing, because acting out scary stuff, that's good stuff. And so I feel like that applying these ideas in a theater production, like here we have Shadow Penny with Aunt Ella during Willandia. It's really a dream for a lighting designer, because you need to have good control of your setup and where the different performers are standing. But actually in the virtual show, well, I'll get to the virtual show, because virtual show, I think it's maybe even easier because you're working with a smaller space that you're filming in versus like a large stage or auditorium. But even just having the shadows dressed all in black, like this photo is from the Belmont Arts Collaborative production a few years ago. And instead of making it, you know, putting the characters all like draped in black, I feel like even just having them in robes, you get it's still like, it has the effect, especially if there's a few of them. So here they are sort of haunting Will. And there we have like young Will, who is also our drawer. And so I think it's just a really fun opportunity for young people to use their body language to help, I don't know, convey this otherworldly presence that, as someone who's a magical realist, is more how I think. Because magical realism is where you set a story in reality. Well, so it's here versus another planet or whatever. But you're showing what is actually invisible, like what is beneath the surface, like what's in the imagination. So I think, so as someone who drew everything out in pencil, in a room by myself, I think it's so inspiring to see other people take these ideas and make it their own and show me like something new with these metaphors and with these characters. And we've also, we did an exhibit inspired by Will and Whit up at the Echo Science Center of Lake Champlain in Vermont, which was super cool. But part of it was a little shadow puppet theater, and we did a workshop, and it was super fun. So this is more of a small scale shadow exploration with the project, but we made just really small, you can see like really small little puppets there that you could put in different pegs and sort of create a scene. Okay. Ooh, okay. So I think, yeah, I've talked about that. I've talked about that, and I've talked about that. So I'm going to move on because we are going to get to the hands-on part of our workshop here. Okay, so to get started, for the hands-on portion, first I want to talk about warming up the imagination, because when we talk about exploring shadow play and drawing our shadow self, drawing things that are invisible to the naked eye, I want to just first mention that there's two different ways of seeing, which one of them is the naked eye, of course, and one is the inner eye, or the mental holodeck, or whatever you want to call it. So if you want to do a good exercise to just compare the two visions, I say draw your toothbrush. Like, don't go to the bathroom and pull it out. Just sit there and think about, like, or some other object that you use every day and that you touch. Just think about something that you feel like you're pretty familiar with and draw it. And then go find the real version and draw it and compare the two. Because I don't think that the inner eye, it is necessarily wrong. Because actually my mom likes the drawing from my imagination more than the real one because it looks more fun. But it actually is just revealing of what stands out to your subconscious, which to me is normally, it's sensory oriented. So it's texture. So obviously I had a toothbrush once that had those little ridges on the handle, and it just stuck in my head, and I've always remembered it. And the bristles are a lot larger because that's the part I pay more attention to. It's like how little kid drawings, when they're starting to pay attention to their hands and like numbers and counting, when they draw like a picture of themselves, they'll have like 1 million fingers. So there's things like that where our imagination will amplify the things that stand out to us. So I think go for it, because trying to just duplicate reality, I mean, that's not really the point of shadow play. The shadow play is all about opening up your subconscious. So you sort of got to bypass how things are supposed to be to like skip through to like what's underneath. So a really simple example of this is just looking at clouds, of course, and looking for a picture in them. It's just giving that subconscious an opportunity to see something, to project something onto it. Because I always say we have a mental filing cabinet in our head full of all the different metaphors that we think with, all the things that we've made, all the things that have inspired us. So if you look at like this Rorschach ink blot, your brains, if you sort of just look at it, your brain will just flip through the file cabinet and just pull the first thing that it thinks of. And it does, no matter what it is, there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on what's in your file cabinet. So let's say you watch a lot of crime, horror, drama sort of stuff, then you'll probably see something sinister in it. You're like, it's a serial killer. But if you're more of a romantic comedy sort of person, maybe I see people kissing. You get the idea. So you are what you consume. So whatever stories and experiences that you consume and put in your file cabinet, that's what you're going to be able to access when you want to draw from your imagination. So let's see, what do I see? And of course, I just pulled these things and I didn't even think about it. Of course, the one on the Rorschach ink blot test, it looks sort of like a weird, like almost like a sinister Grateful Dead bear head. That's sort of what I see. Yeah, I see like a sort of a sinister Grateful Dead bear, maybe, yeah. And then the clouds, I see like a little dog. Oh, I see my friend's dog, Mogwai, who's like a little chihuahua, and it's in like a bubble bath, and then the little feet are sticking up. Okay, that's what I see. I see a dog in a bath, and a sinister Grateful Dead bear. But you can also look for images in like water stains. I know Brian Froud loves that as a creative exercise, and cracks in the sidewalk. And so here's just a quick little shadow example. These are actually a couple photos from my friend Robert, because we were talking about shadowlands and the shadow self. And because to play with shadow play, it doesn't have to just be at nighttime, of course. Even in the middle of the day, you can see things that freak you out. No. So here's just a couple of what shapes that light makes and how it changes through the day. So yeah, of course, this one I see like a little caterpillar. Yeah, like a little caterpillar bug. And this one is interesting because it's almost half light and half dark. So depending on if you're looking at the light or you're looking at the dark, you're seeing like a positive or a negative image. Whoa, it's like some trippy art school stuff. So your shadow sculpt, so your shadow puppet, your shadow play, it could be less of making one solid shape. It could be about carving light within a dark shape. So that's another take that I just wanted to throw in there. Because when you're talking about light and dark, you can sort of sculpt either way, because you need both of them to create an effective shadow, because it's not one or the other. And okay, so this is this photo from our first, oh my gosh, our crazy 2-week, I think, production that we had for our very first workshop of Will Whit at Camp Balabay. And I don't have a picture from the actual night where we just set up a light and had props, and all the kids were just playing around with creating forms on the wall, with props, with their bodies, with playing with scale. And it was just so much fun. So I think with shadow play, like even just doing that, just setting up a light and having a space to experiment is awesome. So it doesn't have to be like a whole big thing, because I'm not going to run through some different sort of approaches for playing with making shadows. I know it'll be better when I have my screen big again. So of course, the first thing I think of are like classic shadow hand puppets. And this is my photo by my friend Rain here on the right, because she likes to just experiment with not trying to copy animals or specific objects with her hands on the wall with shadows, but just playing with movement and the human form. So it doesn't have to duplicate something specific. It's just another way of sort of drawing. And of course, you got your classic shadow puppet theater, which is more this sort of setup where you have the shadow puppet really close to the screen, because if it's further away, it's more fuzzy. So that's why you have it configured with the sticks to help manipulate it and your hand's not in the way. But I don't know how to make that kind, because that is really cool. So that's not what we're doing today. That's a whole other can of worms. I wanted to share this other approach to doing shadow puppetry, which I think is so cool. It's my friend Miranda Elliott, and she uses a projector and paper cutouts, and she creates like scrolling scenes and stories with song accompanying it. I wanted to put a clip of it in here, but there was only so much I could do this week. But she is doing something for the locals in Charlottesville at the Let There Be Light at McGuffey Arts Center at the beginning of December. Stay tuned. So using a projector is a really fun way, because you can even have objects, like things playing with different opacities, like feathers and things, and you can make a story almost like you're doing like a stop motion animation, but just using a projector. I think that way is really fun. Another way you can play with shadows is doing more static imagery. So like classic silhouettes, or like here's Carol Walker, her famous silhouettes here, depicting stories from enslaved, horrors, or Halloween, and real life. But I think that the static use of the shadows, it's really powerful, and it's really like haunting and compelling. In this workshop, we're going to focus more on like the moving ones, but I wanted to also talk about the static ones, because, it is like they have a lot of presence. Ooh, someone's calling me. Hello? I thought this was about the workshop. Maybe not. I guess not. Okay. And of course, shadow sculpture is something that I talk about in Will Whit. This is a piece by Tim Noble and Sue Webster, to give them proper props. But yeah, they were the ones who inspired me to put a trash-made shadow sculpture in Will Whit, because it's just so impressive. And then this is another artist, Yumi Yamashita. Yes. And so I love that they play with duality, because shadows already deal with duality. And so here we have like old and young. But if you look at just the sculpture itself, it just looks like a bunch of metal scraps. So this is like next level subconscious to me because there's multiple meanings and there's multiple, like what it looks like when it's not lit, what it's look like when it is lit. Like it's like double duality. And then let's see. Oh shoot, I didn't write down who did this one. Oh wait, or maybe this is Yumi Yamashita. I'm so sorry, y'all. But I like these because the objects that are casting the shadow, it's more like a really sneaky relief sculpture on the wall. And so they really don't look like what they are projecting, but they play together well as actually an art. So the words, the letters coming out of the head, the sort of shelter, looks like someone holding up a paper from the rain. So it not only is making a sneaky duality like sort of image, but it also is just tying in with the content, which is super cool. And of course, with shadows, you can also play with transparency. Oh my God, if you haven't seen this girl, Ksenia Simonova, if you have, like, find her on YouTube, she does these live action, like, sand paintings. So she's using light and shadow, but she is constantly moving the sand around to transform it into different forms. And it's just genius. So I wanted to mention, I know it's not shadow puppets, but it's just another way to play with like creating shadows and light and darkness as a medium, which I think is really cool. And I think I'm done with my screen share, which, excellent. Okay, let's take me a second. Stop screen share. Okay, okay, I'm back here. So it's just me. Okay. I always hate using screen share because it's distracting with the technology, but now I got puppets, so it'll be fun. Okay. So for our hands-on portion of our workshop today, we're going to make, and for anyone who missed the opening of this talk, my name is Laura Lee Gulledge, and I'm an art nerd, and we're doing stuff here live about playing with our shadows. So when it comes to making like super simple shadow puppets, so when I say super simple, I mean like super simple, like a piece of construction paper that I cut out and put on a popsicle stick. So boom. And I have a couple puppets from Will Whit. So here's one that is actually, it's from the scene where Noel and Autumn are meeting backstage at Penny Farthing Carnival, and Noel wants to profess his love to her, but he's been all hella shy. And so he speaks this like part speech bubble to like say what he can't say. And so this is just one little super easy example of just like how you can have a shadow say something that the character is not. This magical realism element. You can of course play with like how, you know, if it is this, because we had the shadows of Will and Autumn revealing what was going on in their heads behind the real Noel and Autumn, which I still think is a super cool idea. Maybe we can play with that more. But you could even play with like, if it's a silhouette of me, like, blah, you know. So you can play with how the shadow puppets actually like emerge from the figures. And then during the carnival, during the opening number, this songbird swings and Will and What I Sing, you know, that song, of Will and What I Sing. We had some of these bird puppets like flying around because she's the songbird. And actually this is on a coat hanger wire, so super simple. But for something like a bird, it's actually, it has a really nice like spring to it. So yeah, one side is painted just jet black. The other side is, sparkling glitter, which also represents our duality. What? Yeah, because what you make your shadow puppets out of is another opportunity for expressing what you want to say. Because also, if something is going to be a shadow, you know, if something's going to be a shadow on the wall, then actually it doesn't matter that this is gold because you're going to have the same, you know, the same darkness behind it. So I think it's a fun opportunity to play with what you make your shadow puppet out of, because doing just like regular black paper is fine, but missed opportunity. And of course, just to point out with basic shadow basics is that the closer your puppet is to whatever surface you're projecting on, the crisper it will be, which of course, I'm at an angle, so it's like, which is why when you have the classical shadow puppet theater, the puppets have to be right up against the screen, otherwise they're out of focus. So yeah, further away from the surface, it's bigger, oh, I'm a big bird, and then closer it gets smaller and more in focus. And of course, then you can manipulate your lighting. So I just have like, I have a desk lamp. So super simple as far as setup. The sun is sort of still, I'm at dusk right now. So I feel like if this was it, if it was after sunset, then the lighting will be different. So there's a factor to think about. And I could have this closer. Here, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so actually I think further away is better. No, further away is better. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so I call these, I don't know if this is what they're actually called, but I call these like lollipop style puppets because I feel like this is like a lollipop. So I don't know if I picked that up somewhere or I made that up. So I think coat hanger wire is definitely super easy. And for these, I used one of these. I think I used just like old cereal boxes and spray painted it. So yeah, anything that is kind of stiff is good to use for shadow puppets. So for a bunch of the ones I made today, I used Bristol board. Actually, there were pages that I drew speech bubbles on for Mona that were left over. But poster board works well, cereal boxes. You can also use cardboard. It's just a little bit thicker and harder to get clean lines with. So yeah, stuff that's just like this sort of consistency I find pretty good. Or just construction paper. Construction paper I wouldn't do super big because it's pretty flimsy, but if you want to make a really nicely done puppet, you cut out 2 of your shadow designs, and then you put one on the back side and one on the front side. Because then also you don't see this ugly spot where your, utensil or popsicle stick or whatever, or stick or whatever you use as your handle puts on. So that's the next level stuff. Okay, so for our activity, so for yours, shadow puppet, there's 2 different ways you can do it. The first one is the super simple construction paper, and the second one is more using like the coat hanger wire to do something bigger. So I'm going to walk you through both of them. So if you want to do it with me, then you need to go grab a few materials. You would need some sort of good paper to draw on, some poster board or construction paper or whatnot. You'll need scissors and tape and some sort of handle. And that's like it. So if you want to do it with us, then you can go and like grab it and come right back. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Welcome back. Turn this back on me since I'm not on the wall at the moment. So now this is the vulnerable part, because I realized after I designed this workshop, oh, I'm talking about making art out of our fears and our darkest thoughts. That means I'll need to actually talk about them. So I'm gonna get personal here for a minute, because also that's what people want from artists. They want the things that, are hard for everyone to talk about, and that's our job. So like I said before, when making a puppet, I find it more interesting if the material you're using, it represents whatever you're trying to express, as well as the shape. So the shape and the inside are opportunities for expression. So this is one I made yesterday. Ooh, a fun spiral. Yeah, so this one, as you can see, I have text in here. So, so I guess, which one should I talk about first? Let's see. This one or this one? I guess I'll start with the little baby one. one, because this one I can get more into stuff. So for something like this, I started off, okay, so for the more therapeutic one, I recommend taking whatever surface you're going to make your puppet out of and just scribble the crap out of it. Just scribble the whole thing to sort of just activate the paper. Because sometimes when the paper's too clean, it's just hard to open up. So this sort of activates the page, so it's already like it has some of your energy in it. You're like, oh, I'm doing stuff. And also it's a little like, you know, working out some stress. And so, and also this is helpful because the next step is to write words on top of it. Because I don't know about you, but writing the stuff from inside my head, like journaling, it feels really vulnerable and exposing. So that's why when I make word art about negative stuff, I generally disguise it in some way. Sometimes I'll write things upside down or write things backwards or paint over it, but you sort of disguise it because I feel like the point of this art project is not for other people to read all the stuff you wrote. The point is just to take your emotion and infuse it in this paper. It's like a Horcrux in Harry Potter, but not evil. Because art is like a battery. It's like charged with energy that you put into it. So it's not important if someone reads it, because also I don't want them to read it. So I'm like, oh, don't read it. Because it's about getting it out at all. That's the important part. So for this, I use India ink. And for the words that I first wrote, so I started off by writing the basic dark thoughts in my head, which are anger, shame, guilt, envy, and fear. So those are sort of the big baddies. So I started off by writing those out. And then I did a little journaling too, let's face it. I had to do some journaling to figure out like what is in there. So maybe it'd be a good idea to do a quick little journal to make a few lists. You're like, okay, what are my fears? And what are the things that I'm not talking about? Because I find the stuff that collects in the subconscious, like the darker stuff, it's often the stuff that we're just not talking about. It's what doesn't see the light of day. It's the stuff that sort of eats away at you. And I think that sometimes it's secrets, sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's, I don't know, just stuff that you don't feel comfortable revealing. Maybe it's things that you judge about yourself. Whatever you sort of like push back down, like that's what feeds your shadow self. So you can make a few lists. So your fears, what are you afraid of? Like not just like, oh, spiders, but like for real scared of. Then what is your inner critic telling you? So I feel like inner critic is a label that a lot of people are familiar with, about giving like personifying that part of the self that really throws that negative energy at yourself, like the self-imposed judgment. So give a little voice to your inner critic. Like, what are they using as weapons against you? So that's good content for it too. And lastly, what is your matter telling you? And I feel like, I guess I just made a book about my matter, so I can really recognize its voice now. Thankfully, it doesn't say nearly as much as it used to. Now it just says, unworthy, unworthy, unworthy. That's pretty much the only word that it will like really like get under my skin, thankfully. But I am going to share some more things just for examples, because my job is to be vulnerable, to then show you how to be vulnerable. So for me, let's see, fears. What am I afraid of? Well, when I was a kid, I was afraid of, it's funny because I made a list of the things I was afraid of as a kid, and they all relate to what I do now. So I was scared of moving. I was terrified that my family would have to move and we'd have to start over because I was very shy. And I've had to move, literally, I just finished moving my second time this pandemic. I've moved so much because it turns out it's a side effect of the artist life. I also was scared of the dark. So of course I've made all this art about the dark. and about shadows. I'm still scared of fish, but as a kid, I was really scared of fish. And of course, now my spirit animal is a parrotfish, which look them up. They're pretty cool and fun. And I was scared of clowns and Santa. And actually, I used to be a scenic painter on Christmas windows and actually did get to work in Santa Land. So it's kind of funny that the things that you're scared of as a kid in some way, if you're on the artist hero's journey, like a lot of people, you face those fears. So what am I afraid of now? Well, the fish give me the heebie-jeebies, but I'm trying to work on it. So I didn't want to make a puppet about fish. But I am super scared of deep water. I'm scared of engulfment. I'm scared of enslavement. I'm scared of like losing my mental capacity as someone who prides themselves on their like quick wits. Of course, I'm scared of nuclear holocaust, and I'm scared of floaty people. Like anytime there's a movie or something where people are floating, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. Okay, so those are my fears, and some of those are like woven in here. And then my matter tells me, yeah, what does my matter tell me? My matter, it's angry. It is angry that my book tour was canceled this spring. It's still angry that I lost my business model and that I didn't get to do the cool residencies with kids I was supposed to do. So my matter's still angry about that. My matter, it's envious of people who make different life choices than me sometimes. So it's definitely envious of people who have more like financial stability, for example, or have biological children, as someone who makes book babies. So people who represent things that we don't have, that we're dealing with. Yeah, matter loves to, use that to like dig at me. My matter, I feel very ashamed of my nail biting. So I'm always trying, so sometimes if they get really bad, it's hard if I'm like teaching or something, because then I don't want to show them. I also have shame about family knit relationships. I know we're getting real personal here. And I have shame about recent verbal abuse I had in a housing situation, because when someone is bullying you, it's kind of, I hate to say, they make you feel like you somehow deserve it, and you don't. And then I felt ashamed that I let myself get treated this way and was in this situation. And of course, logically, I know that it wasn't my fault, but these are just weapons that my negative side will just latch onto. So if I can at least pay attention to what weapons are being thrown at me by journaling about it and giving voice to these things, then I can say like, hey, no, I didn't deserve to be treated like that. And no, I didn't make that happen to me. And so I can sort of logic Vulcan, like deal with being like, oh no, that's not true. So the next time when my negative thought says that, then I'm like, actually, no, then I won't accept it. It doesn't resonate as real. And then of course, the third thing I said to journal about, we had your fears, your matter, and your inner critic. So what does my inner critic tell me? Well, it's been very chatty over the years. It's definitely a little quieter now. Now it just says unworthy, but it used to say that I was crazy, that I was broken, that I was weak, that I was doomed, that I was isolated. So all this stuff, and it wasn't true, but I thought it was true, because sometimes you don't know which thought you had is true, which one is the real answer and what's not. So sometimes you might think your negative thoughts are the real thoughts, but no, it's just your shadow. It's just your shadow self. So as far as, so back to the shadow puppets. So for this example, after I wrote in words, sort of like word vomited, like dumped out all this stuff, then I did like an ink wash over it just to sort of, I don't know, put it behind a haze even more, because I just wanted to embed this energy in the paper. And then I cut it out. And so I picked a spiral as my exterior shape, because I draw my matter as sort of this whirlpool, and I'm always scared that it's gonna like suck me in, because also I'm scared of engulfment, and I'm scared of deep water. I'm scared of losing myself. So I picked a spiral. Let's see, let's move this way. wait, it's the best way. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. But yeah, actually, so I'm gonna put this behind my head. Maybe it's on this side. Actually, I think if you have a proper, I know, I set up for live streaming, and set up for live streaming and for shadow play is a little daunting. So please forgive, this is not as perfect as it could possibly. This is 1.0. I was thinking it could be cool to interact your shadow on the wall with your shadow representation. So maybe I'm like, or I eat it, ow. Or maybe it is, I feel like this is where having an partner is helpful, because it could come down from elsewhere to interact with you. And of course, then motion. But for this, I just took coat hanger wire. And as you can see, I spray painted the backside. So I just used some more scraps of paper and hot glued that, and then boom, you gotta pop it. And so, yeah, so this one I chose the shape of sort of a whirlpool. So it could be like representational like that, or it could just be a regular shape, like non-objective shape. So for example, with the little baby puppets, which I'll talk more about next, I picked this little Pac-Man sort of shape because this is how I often draw my inner critic. I draw them like a little Pac-Man ghost because they're sort of like, you're terrible, what are you doing? What's that supposed to be? So they're just like small and nuisance, and sometimes there's a whole flock of them. So, oh yeah. And I think having holes cut within your shape is much more engaging than just like a super solid shape. So you might need like an X-Acto knife. But I think something like this is really fun to play with scale, because it's like in that scene in Lord of the Rings. Well, actually, it's a lot of stories where Sam is trying to intimidate an orc, and so he makes his shadow really big, and he's like, but then he reveals himself, and he's like a tiny little hobbit. So with something like my little critic here, who in my head, he's like this big. He's like, you're never gonna make it. But in actuality, he's actually this big. So this is a fun exercise just to even think about how the shape of something and scale can change how you interact with it. Then another one I made was more of like a wave, like water. But also it's sort of, I don't know, it reminds me of my matter, which will sort of like come in like a cloud sometimes. So it's just sort of a swoopy shape, because that's just what I thought, that's what I thought of. So almost like a little cloud or like water, like, so it actually doesn't look too threatening. But yeah, that doesn't look good. I keep wanting to eat them. It's like the Jim Henson fan in me. Because Jim Henson, he always said, if you don't know what to do with your characters, or how to end your story, then you can always have them, one character eat the other, or they just explode. So it's my go-to. Yeah, because when it comes to acting them out, like interacting with your puppets. Oh wait, before I'll talk about that. Then I'll make one. I feel like that it's sort of is like a therapy experiment for how you want to interact with your puppet when you're done. So it could be more of an antagonistic relationship where you like defeat it and then it leaves. Or maybe it's more befriending it. I feel like a lot of times we need to befriend whatever the pain is, to listen to it and, acknowledge it, but then sort of like embrace it and let it go. So maybe you're like, bye, ghost. Or maybe you're really getting, maybe you're like tickling, like, oh, we're friends, or, or maybe it sits, maybe it sits in the palm of your hand. That you can play with your shadow and you interplaying. Or maybe you are just talking and listening to it, like, so hey, like, what do you want? Like, you've been keep bugging me, and you got nothing. Whatever. Yeah, so suddenly it turns to a kid puppet show. And I guess, let's see, what's my time? Okay. Yeah, for this one, just a quick little intel. What I did was use white Conte crayon and draw on here and then cut out and put on a stick, and that's super easy. I find that you can, like this sort of activity you can do with kids. The only obstacle with like elementary age though is that a lot of times scissor skills are not the best. So cutting out stuff could be challenging. So if you did this with little kids, then you might need to have a little help with that. But at least it's a good opportunity for having a conversation to talk about feelings and these things that sometimes are hard to label. Okay. And why is this all healing? Like, why am I telling you to make puppets inspired by your dark thoughts to like reveal them? Well, it's because to me, when I write down something I've been holding on to, something that maybe I'm embarrassed or ashamed or angry about, then and I shine a light on it, then it has just a little bit less power over me, because it's what we don't talk about that has power over us. So it might not feel like that you're like, oh, I drew a fish and now I'm not scared of fish anymore. It's not that easy, but even just admitting that it's there, then I find it's helpful. It's healing, because then if you keep doing it, then it sort of weakens it. So it doesn't hold so much power over you. It's like the story of Demons on the Boat, where, this guy's on a boat, and the deal is that if he keeps the boat out at sea, the demons of the boat will stay below deck. But if he goes to the shore, the demons will come out. So he stays out at sea because he doesn't want to deal with no demons. But eventually he's just so bored and lonely. He's like, you know what? I can't take this anymore. And he turns to the shore. And so, of course, the demons come out, and they're all like, they're all scary, being demon-like. And so he's like, ah! But then he's like, oh, wait, they can't actually hurt me because they're like ghosts. So is it worth it to stay isolated and live in fear, or to actually try to live and just have to deal with listening to them? Because these negative thoughts aren't going to like physically hurt you, even though they feel like they will. It just means that they're just going to be a passenger in the car of life. And so that's why I might as well listen to them, maybe befriend them, see what what they're trying to, make you deal with. Because oftentimes they do lead to some healing, some wisdom. And yeah, just acknowledge that they're there. Okay. So that brings me to the close of my workshop. I went through a little fast today because I just felt like also 90 minutes is like a really long time because it's Friday and it's Halloween weekend. Oh! So to close, I have a few things to share. So first I want to thank VTA for having me and for debuting the Will Whit virtual musical. And if you would like to license the musical or learn more about it, you can go to willandwit.com, or you could email us at artner@willandwit.com. Artner. And of course, if I have I actually have a PDF of some of the drawing activities from my book of sketchbook dares, including one about drawing your darkness, your matter. So that is actually on my website in my learning page, because I just set up a new page that has lots of resources. Oh no, I see something else I forgot to mention. Just realized earlier I forgot to mention when playing with shadows that you can use your body to play with the shadows. Playing with things like fabric and masks and, costumes and all that sort of thing. So anyway, you can do that. But my website is whoislauralee.com, and I think I'm flipped. So on the learning page, I have tons of resources and videos at your disposal that's free. And also on my store, you can buy books and I'll sign them. So yeah. And I have a couple events coming up to share. One is I have a virtual and in-person mini pop-up Comic-Con that I invented called WOMCon, because it's women creators in comics. So we're doing an event on November 14th because most of the Comic-Cons and shows are canceled. But staying connected with the community is really important. So I wanted to create at least some sort of platform for at least just the women cartoonists I know, so we could help amplify each other. So it's going to be at the Bridge in Charlottesville, as well as we're going to have a bunch of virtual content from my various Comic-Con sisters. So that'll be cool. And I have a virtual art class for adults in December, all about drawing out stress. Because I just thought that by December, everyone's gonna be like really overwhelmed and stressed and like winter, no. So yeah, so if you want to join me for that, the info about that is in my blog. And okay. And I guess I am done. So I don't know if anyone has any questions they would like to write in the chat window. I'm happy to. In fact, do I have a chat window up? I am so on top of it. Oh, there's the chat window. Oh, I got about the, thank you. I know I had to chop up something with this pandemic. I had to like let go of the past. Does anyone have any questions? Well, just my bow tie. I'm just excited that you guys could take part, and I hope this was helpful and maybe could spark a little inspiration with yourself or your students. And I hope that you all stay well and stay weird. Stay weird and vote. I guess if nobody has any questions, then I guess I'm gonna end our session here. So I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Oh, people, yes.
Can we, I missed your play. Is it a way to see it again?
Oh, I know that we're gonna do another viewing, screening, something of it in November, but I don't know the details. Okay. But if you, I'm trying to think, I guess you can, if I have your email, I can always put you on my email for, know about
I'll drop it. I'll drop it in the chat.
Yeah, I post everything in my blog. It's like whoislauralee.blogger.com. Well, it's through my website. Yeah, so I tend to post everything on there that's going on. And you can also email the project at artner@willandwit.com.
Yeah, it seems very interesting. I really like what you had to say. It's good.
Thanks. Yeah, the virtual production, it was super cool. It was way cooler than I thought it was going to be. It was like watching a movie. Like, yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. We even had a girl from the Philippines.
Yeah, I am. I am. That's funny that you took that out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are you into drama therapy? You seem like you would be.
I'm definitely an art therapy type. I'm a fan of all the therapies. Like I like narrative therapy and art therapy, and I do a lot of dance. That's my new thing. And
awesome.
Yeah, so it's all like the same stuff, right? It's just channeling through different mediums, whether you're using pictures or movement or sound, you know.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I'll get in touch with you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a good evening.
I have a quick question. I posted it in the chat. So I missed the very first part, and you probably explained this, but as you were doing your modeling, you were always in front of the screen. And so I missed the part where you explained whether you're supposed to be in front of a screen or behind a screen or maybe some of each. Because normally I'm thinking not showing the actual objects themselves, but the way you were modeling it, we saw the objects plus the shadows.
Yes. So I don't have like a shadow puppet theater. I don't have a setup with a screen. I did touch on that, like that's the traditional setup for doing shadow play. Yeah, here I was just this is a little more DIY, casual.
But as the audience, are we meant to try to ignore what's making the shadows, or is that part of it? The body itself that's making the shadows. I mean, that's the part that I missed.
Oh, well, it's not like one way to do it. Because I feel like that, like for me, this activity is more about making puppets that represent your negative inner thoughts, and then you interact with it to heal. So for that, like this setup is a little better, but if it's about like telling more of a story, you know, like a theatrical setting, then yeah, you would have more of a screen and it would be flipped. So maybe you would see the silhouette of the person and the silhouette of the shadow puppet to explore that dynamic, and you don't see them, you know, like you see me here. But unfortunately, I don't have a setup for that, because also I just moved and I don't have internet. I'm at a friend's house using her laptop, and yeah, this is kind of it's some real life going on.
I was trying to think about how to do this with 7th graders and on Zoom, and how to, you know, what kind of project to assign for them, how they would tell the story. And
as long as you, I mean, it could be like if you changed it so their camera was more like, you know, here. So it's like, oh, I got, you know, more this sort of format. Or you could have them hang a sheet. I guess it depends on how involved, like what materials they have at home.
Right.
I find that the shadow puppet screen, it's kind of hard, because for the shadows to be clear, it has to be right up against the surface. So if it's sort of ramshacked together and it's not super solid, then it'd be easy to knock over, and I could see it having a lot of frustration.
Okay. And you also made me think
also,
about
it could be like my friend Miranda, she uses like a projector and she lays things out on the projector. So they could be it could be like creating puppets that they move around and their camera is more like down and it's more like a copy stand. I feel like it's based on like what they have access to, because they might not have that much control over their lighting, for example.
Right.
So maybe it would be best for them to make stuff that is opaque, that looks more like this, but solid. Or maybe it's more of them like using like props in their body. It's really, you can adapt it, I suppose, also to what you are, because also they could just be really little ones. They could be like smaller than this one. And it could be
and they could also,
up in your, maybe it's like way up here, like, oh, I'm inside of my shot.
Oh, that's actually really cool. I like that. Okay, good. You
so maybe it's less about creating, because I feel like you don't want to spend all this time making up a whole setup. I feel like it's more about just like cutting to the chase.
Right. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that's helpful.
It is. I'm writing that down. Thanks. All right.
Cool.
Bye. Thanks for your ideas.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? It's just me. Okay.